Hello and welcome to Best for Women Live. I'm your host, Brooke Gordon, and today I'm joined by Andrea Henry to talk about how to leverage the law to be able to make the most out of your intellectual property. So, what does that actually mean? Well, for those of you who may have a course, you may have worksheets, you may have a way of doing business, we're going to be having a fabulous conversation today with Andrea about what it means, what you can do with it, and all of these exciting pieces. Now, I'm just waiting for her to join me online. I am hopeful that we will see her in just one moment. So I'm going to send her a note and see if she is ready. I see her there. Excellent. I have learned that this can work two different ways. She's here. She's joining. She's live. She's here. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Oh, I am so good. How are you?
I am great. I am great.
These
It's sunny
are all
outside.
things that there shall be no complaints about, sunshine. In case you haven't noticed, we have turned to the cold weather at this time of recording, and that is a thing, just this beautiful sun streaming in. It's coming in on this side, so my face is like beautifully glowing. So, Andrea, before we jump into this fabulous conversation, we're getting lots of waves and hellos in the chat. I love it. We're engaging already. Lots of time for questions for Andrea. So just drop those into the chat if you are live with us. But Andrea, can you start by introducing yourself to us?
Sure. So I'm Andrea Henry. I'm a business lawyer and IP strategist at Henry Brooks LLP. And I am obsessed with helping women build businesses that give them freedom and give them.
Oh, that is crisp. That is crisp. I love that. I love that. It's fabulous for me because I just was in not a pitch competition, I'll just say pitch practice. And so coming from a call this morning, and it was so fabulous because a group of women, and one of them's like, I know you make us do this every time we meet, and I feel like it's getting a little easier. And then one of them was in a pitch competition. She won. And so she came on and she introduced herself, and it was smooth and it was flowing just like yours. So I know you have practiced that many times. It was excellent. We're going to get you in a pitch competition.
Right? We're going to talk about that later. Hi,
amazing. So, Andrea, we're talking about sort of this idea of leveraging the law to maximize your intellectual property. So can we start off, because we use so many acronyms in our day-to-day. I actually, some acronyms are the same acronym for other acronyms in the similar field. Like, it's just wild. So tell us a little bit about IP. What does it mean? What does it stand for? What does it represent?
Yeah, so IP is intellectual property. And it's essentially anything that the human mind can create, all the way from what we normally think of as creative, so books and poems and songs and plays, but also in our business, our systems, our PDFs, our content, our videos, the way that we do things, our framework and our methodology. Those are all intellectual property because they're all created right here.
Oh, that is good. Okay, may I push you? What is the difference then between intellectual property and something like a copyright? Or is copyright part of, like, how does that fit together?
Copyright is part of. So there are four main different types of intellectual property, three of whom can be registered and one which cannot. Copyright is one of those forms of intellectual property that can be registered. So copyright, it really does what it says on the tin. It is the right to copy. So if you've created something, some type of content, if you have copyright, you own the rights to copy it. You can tell someone that they can or they cannot copy it and share it, and kind of the limits within which they can do it. One of the other types that can be registered is trademark. So trademark is different than copyright because trademark is not about the content. It's about the thing that distinguishes you in the marketplace. So a name, a logo, a catchphrase. Interestingly, it's only in relation to business. So
yeah, we've got all the time. This is what we're here for. Tell me the stories, Andrea. Tell me the stories.
So a few years back, you know the hashtag Black Girl Magic. It had been originated by someone many, many years ago. A few years back, Essence Magazine applied in the US to trademark hashtag Black Girl Magic for an online magazine that they wanted to start. The person who had created and was the originator of the hashtag was like, how on earth do you think you're going to get a trademark? Like, everyone knows it's mine. But she's never used it in association with business. She'd never sold a mug, never printed on a t-shirt, had never commercialized it. Essence won. Like, they got, go Google it, there's a online magazine with that hashtag because they won the case. So trademark has to be used in association with business, and that's how it differs in part from copyright, which you can put out a poem and never sell it and just have it out there for the appreciation of art and still be able to protect it and stop other people from copying it. The third of the intellectual property categories that can be registered is patents. So patents are like engineering designs, right? So if you come up with a new mechanical razor or a new bicycle or something of that nature, you can protect the engineering. All software code sometimes can be considered patent depending on what it is.
Can I interrupt you really quick before we leave patents? They are time limited. Yeah. And I can say this because mine has expired, right? So my background's in engineering. My patent is in a form of manufacturing for semiconductor chips. And it was so novel that it hasn't gotten to commercialization yet. It's still in the research phase. And then sufficient time has passed. I am not going to give my age online, but we will say sufficient time has passed that it has now expired, which was super interesting. So I was a patent holder as of this year or last year. I am now previously a patent holder.
Yeah, because they think that for some things it's important that they go into the public space and the public can benefit from it. Trademarks, interestingly, you can also lose a trademark if you don't enforce it. So, zipper used to be a trademark term. I don't know what they called it before, but zipper used to be a trademark term. And everyone started calling that little thing that we use to zip our clothes up the zipper. And the company that owned it didn't enforce it. And so it entered into the public domain. If you don't take the steps to protect what you've registered as a trademark, and everyone starts using it, it loses.
Oh, this is an interesting one. So this is the idea that you use a tissue to blow your nose, but everyone calls it a Kleenex. But Kleenex is the brand or the trademark of a type of tissue, but we just recognize that as a common household name, even though they're not available in Canada anymore. Okay, very interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. So then those are the three that can be registered. The fourth is trade secrets. Now, trade secrets can't be registered anywhere. These are essentially concepts, right? So an idea is not intellectual property, but if there's a way that you do something that you've actually implemented, it's not a trademark, right? It doesn't distinguish you in the marketplace. It's not content necessarily. It's definitely not patent. But trade secrets are a form of intellectual property. So in our community, if you have an amazing onboarding process for your clients, that may be a trade secret, right? That may be something only you and your team know. You can't register it anywhere, but it's part of the secret sauce in your business. Or if you have a particular way that you market or your follow-up, sequences to die for. Those are all trade secrets that you can't register anywhere. And the only ways that those can be protected is through contracts. So
please, I love your examples.
Uber and Lyft. So before Uber, the concept of ride sharing did not exist, right? We had taxis and that was it. So Uber was the first one to come up with the idea of this app where you could have people who were not taxi drivers and they would ride with strangers. So while they were working on that at Uber, no one knew about it, right? And they couldn't let other people know about it because they would lose their first to market advantage. So everyone who would have been working on it would have signed contracts which would have non-disclosure clauses, or they would have signed non-disclosure agreements saying, we're not going to share this trade secret. The thing with trade secrets is, once it's out into the public, it's essentially gone, which is why we have Lyft. Because once Uber launched, once Airbnb launched, all of those first to market, the concept now can be used by other people. So no one else can call themselves Uber. No one else can copy like their design. Those are all trademarked. But the concept itself of ride sharing or, what Airbnb does, those are all now in the public domain.
Okay. This is super interesting, super interesting. And so I want to bring it practical because I'm like genuinely loving the examples that you're giving. I think they're so important. So as we go through, we think about these four different types, right? So I just want to quickly make sure I've remembered them. So there's copyright, there's trademark, there's the patent, and then there's the trade secret. Okay, and copyright is your sort of definition that you own this material and you have the right to define how and who gets to copy it. There is the trademark, which is
Right?
for businesses and gets registered, and it has to be related to commerce, which means there has to have been an exchange of some kind, a contractual exchange by money or otherwise, in order to make that enforceable. There's the patent, which I added to this. It is time limited. And then there's the feeling old in this moment. That's okay. And then the last one is the idea of the trade secret. And that's bound by contract. So if you've ever signed confidentiality agreement, NDA or non-disclosure agreement or non-disclosure contract, these are all related to the fact that that happens. So if in the event that an employer or a supplier leaves, then your secret's out, but you may be able to come after them for compensation.
Exactly. Exactly. And we have a great question in the comments about recipes, whether recipes should be trade secrets. The answer is yes. So recipes, surprisingly, cannot be copyrighted, which is unusual, right? You would think that it's content, but recipes cannot be copyrighted, but they are a trade secret. So, for example, if you worked at KFC or Coke, those original recipes, first of all, practically speaking, only a few people know them, but those people will all have signed agreements that they cannot disclose them. And if they do,
Andrea, this is the caramel. How do they get the caramel in the caramel bar? That's technically a trade secret, which is why they were able to sort of play on it in the campaign. Okay. Although I do actually happen to know how that works. It's kind of gross if you know about it, but yeah, okay. I know I have a friend in food and agriculture who broke the secret. Food science. Yeah. Okay, so this is very cool. And so tell us a little bit more about how this applies to us as business owners, because we're sort of talking about it conceptually.
Yeah.
Here's all the venues or the pathways that you can lean into. But like here I am, I've got, stuff. So how do we tell us how we get there from here to there?
Right.
Ooh,
Well,
okay.
almost from there backwards. So the copyright and the trademark, etc., are really the final stages, right? You've created something, and now you want to protect the thing that you've created. Where I love to work with people is where are the opportunities to create, and where have you already created that perhaps you're only using in a limited function, but there are much wider and better opportunities for you to use that. So I used the example earlier of, if you've got an amazing onboarding slash follow-up sequence with your clients, maybe you're in an industry where that's not common, right? You've created something and it's really your secret sauce. You may get to the point in your business, maybe you're in your capacity, or you want to start training other people, where this now becomes your system, and those things can be licensed, those can be turned into a certification program if you've got a particular framework or methodology. So often we look at what we create purely internally. Like this is for our clients, or we're creating this, video to help our clients understand X, Y, Z. Or we've created videos for our teams, or our standard operating procedures for our teams. Maybe we do workshops with corporate clients, or we just do them as one-off workshops. They ask us to come in and do a workshop, we do that. So what I work with clients on is seeing these things that they've already created through new eyes. So yes, corporate may want your workshop, but is there an opportunity where some of the other things and the other frameworks that you've created can be combined with that workshop to now come up with a program that can be sold into corporate? If you've got these amazing internal training manuals, who else in your industry might want to have access to that so that they can train their teams in a more time effective way? So it's looking to really expand the application of what we've created so that you're creating. I'm fundamentally a bit of a lazy person. So the whole idea of creating something once and then having multiple applications from it
I just want
has
to say
always been
that's
really
not
fun.
lazy, that's efficiency. And so you are an inherently efficient person. You're
Thank you. I
very
love the
welcome.
replay.
Okay, so I want to share a beautiful example of a friend of mine. She created this amazing training on how to bathe people with dementia who may be at risk of being combative, because that's actually a thing. And so, as part of their fear, they become combative. They're in an extremely vulnerable position because they're being bathed. So, how do you do that in a safe way?
Mm-hmm.
So, she started by training people locally on how to do this. She is a member of the Alzheimer's Society. She's one of their sort of staff. And eventually, they actually created a social enterprise whose sole purpose is to take this training. They've translated it into multiple languages. They have gone around the world to deliver this training because it's so novel and so impactful and truly an area of very niche expertise, gerontology, nursing, dementia expert. And so it's been
Wow.
amazing to watch her journey of this whole business that like blew up unexpectedly.
Yeah, this is the thing. And like often, I love that you mentioned the niche. Often people think, especially if you're really, really good at a particular thing, what I've often found with people is that the thing that we're great at, we assume that everyone else knows because it comes so naturally to us and it's kind of so obvious to us because of our experience, the combination of our experience in education and, natural abilities. We kind of think it's obvious to everyone. And it's that thing that is the key to unlocking your IP. The thing that you think is obvious, it's so easy for you to do, is the thing that other people struggle with and would be willing to pay you for. I have a client who, similarly, her niche is women who are returning to the workplace after maternity leave. And in a lot of industries, when women come into the workforce, they're roughly equal in terms of numbers and positions to men. And as seniority increases, the number of women drops. And a lot of that is because there's not a really good way to transition women back to work after they've taken a break or breaks from maternity leave. And so that's her niche. And companies are happy to buy her program if she licenses into corporate because there's such a huge expense to them to have to continually retrain people because they don't have a way to help them to transition back to work, right? So in actual financial costs, it's an expensive problem, but also in social and kind of reputational costs, it's a problem because you don't want to be known of as the employer who, all of the people in the C-suite are men because you haven't been able to make your workplace a comfortable and safe space for women. So I often tell clients if you can solve an expensive problem for people with money, you know, and that doesn't mean that your solution has to be dollars and cents. Sometimes it's reputational, sometimes it's social. In the case of your friend, we have an increasingly aging population of whom a
Yeah.
large number suffer with dementia. To be able to alleviate some of the frustration and the discomfort and the difficulty with people who there's difficulty in recruiting people to work with the elderly because it can be so difficult. So if you provide that tool where now you've got multiple sections of society benefiting, that in itself an expensive problem,
And
even
you
if it's
raised
not
two
a
important points. In
financial
this
gain.
case, it is a volume, uh, you know, just purely practical speaking, right? Full business hat on, analytics hat on. This
Yeah,
is a volume problem because there are many people who are elderly with dementia, and it is a workplace safety problem
yeah,
because those people who require care can be combative, and so that combat, right, physical
yeah,
violence is happening to a caregiver or a care worker, and so in that case you're solving
yeah,
multiple problems. So I really appreciate you giving this example.
exactly.
May I put you on the
Yeah,
spot? Are you comfortable with this? Okay, so thinking
of
about this
course.
idea of the things that you're exceptional at, you and I both know that there are many women in the workforce who are now starting to have, that particular skill set that they can't utilize fully at work. And so they'll go out into the market
Yeah.
to have a place to explore that skill set for compensation. So some people call it the side hustle, or it's exploring a consulting role on the side. It used to be called moonlighting, all kinds of names for it. And so if you have
Yeah.
something that you create using your corporate resources in a corporate setting, it belongs to the corporation. I'm seeing you nod your head. But if you have sort of a skill set or you've realized that there's a niche and you are creating it outside of the workplace, tell me a little bit about that
Yeah.
transition or the things that people need to know or be aware of.
Yeah. So a lot of that is going to be dependent on the contract that you have with your workplace. So there are some employers who, for some most employers will say, look, if you do it on work time with work resources as part of something that we
Yep.
essentially paid you to create, it's ours. And some employers will be like, that's the case, but if you do something outside of work, that's perfectly fine, that's yours. And then there are some employers that are like, for the time that you are working with us or that you are retained by us if you're a contractor, any of the intellectual property that you
Mm.
create belongs to us. So the first place that you should look is your agreement. And if you are at all interested in having a side hustle, you want to make sure that if you're moving to a new employer or a new contract, that you understand the intellectual property clause. There will always be one in a contract so that you understand what you're creating and who it belongs to. If that's not in your contract and you're free to create, then you do want to make sure that you are creating not on company time, not with company resources, so that there's a very clear distinction between what you're creating for the company and what you're creating for yourself. Most employers used to have a clause that said you could not compete with them. As of last year, those clauses are very hard, if not impossible, to enforce. There were some changes in the law because the courts have decided that it's important that people have a free flowing, we have a free flowing economy. And so the ability to stop people from competing has mostly gone away. However, your employer can
Mm-hmm.
still stop you from soliciting clients, so from reaching out to existing clients to provide competing services, or from competing with information that you only
Going
know
back to
because
sort of
of
that
your
trade
research.
secret concept. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you only learned of this concept, if you only learned of this way of doing things, you only have this information because you're working with us, you can't use that to compete. But if you were in a different sector or you're not using information from your employer, then you can. You can provide compete. Your employer won't love it, but you can. But ideally, you do something that's not a direct competition if you want to remain
Oh, this is
employed
really good
and
advice.
hired, right?
Thank you for letting me put you on the spot. Um, sort of I want to build on this idea of entrepreneurship and business owners. Oftentimes, you think about, especially if you're getting started, if you're in the services. So product is a little different because then you're working on a product and you're working on transaction and volume transaction. When you're dealing with service, oftentimes that service is one for one. So Andrea, I'm going to hire you. You and I are going to spend a day together. You're going to work through all my contracts and I'm going to pay you appropriately. That's time for service in the literal physical sense.
Yeah. So
Oh,
one of the
how do we jump out of that? How do we not do that?
how do we
There
got that?
are only about yeah.
So
Okay, perfect. There's
intellectual
only like 40
property.
hours in a week. So yeah, this is
There's
yeah.
there. There's a limit to how much you can work, and there's a limit to how much you want to work, even if there was more time available. So one of women tend, as a general thing, to get into services more than products. And so that has been an issue, right? Like if you're providing services, both as a side hustle or as a full time entrepreneur, there's a limit to how much one to one work that you can do. There are a couple of things that you can do in order to scale. The most kind of obvious is you bring on people to do some of that work for you, right? So you start to hire and you bring on a team to provide the services. But not everyone likes to manage teams, right? It's not in everyone's skill set or desire. And we have an increasingly tightening labor force, which means as a small business or a startup, it's becoming increasingly difficult to compete for good quality employees or contractors. The other so if you don't want to manage a big team, you can convert some of your one-to-one services into group programs, right? So you see that often with coaches and consultants. that they'll say, this is something that I'm offering one-to-one, but I'm going to do this at a group level. And if you think of the third level, then the certification, the licensing, the franchising is when you take what you're doing for your individual clients and really move it to scale. So if you are a service professional who has a specific framework or way of doing things, that could be a coach, that could be someone in the beauty industry, that could be a consultant. You can now train other people to provide the services in the way that you do. That has two benefits. One, it increases your visibility, your brand recognition, because all of these people now are, whatever your brand is, certified. It increases your impact because now they're doing things in the way that you do it. And it increases your revenue because you can charge those people to go through the certification program. And normally, well, this is what I advise my clients, you've got an ongoing, renewal or additional licensing or additional education fee so that you're making money on a ongoing basis. If you're not about teaching people, which is understandable, right? If you don't want to teach people to be certified by you, you can package your services into a product. So on a very basic level, that may be a course, but it also may be, as I gave the example earlier, a license into corporate. So I have clients who are in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space who have created a program specifically for theater companies to help them to be more diverse. And they have licensed this to multiple, it's the same program. They've licensed it to multiple theater companies. It's like the advantage of selling these programs into corporate is that corporate tends to have bigger budgets. They can write bigger checks, and they tend to be for a longer period of time, which if you're a small business owner, especially if you're looking to transition from paid employment to entrepreneurship, having that recurrent committed income really helps smooth the transition when you're not accustomed to
and just if I can pause there, this is the difference between revenue and cash flow, because you can have a projected revenue that you want to take, right? I'm not going to say we don't have budgets when we're in entrepreneurship. We set revenue goals, and then we have expenses that are going to get us to that revenue goal. It's not the other way around. So we don't budget. We do have forecasts, right? And this is what makes it different. So when you have a salary, you've got a fixed income, and now you have to work backwards for your budget. When you're in entrepreneurship, you have a revenue goal. There's going to be expenses that need to get you there. And so you need to charge and have a good margin to be able to pull out some salary and live in between time. And so one of the things that's so important is you can set a revenue goal, but if you only get paid once a year, you got to figure out how to make that money last, which is very different from cash flow, because literally the money comes in every month. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. You think of major holidays, major events in the year when people, the idea of something called Black Friday, it's because people finally got in the black. They finally, for the first time, like the pen went from red as in negative to black as in making money. So they made their first profit in November, right? Retail. It is crazy. And so when we put those things together, this is really valuable. So this idea of using courses and group work and packages and retainers and all of these types of things can mean that you've got a regular base coming in. Am I capturing all this correctly?
Absolutely. 100%.
I'm in.
Go on the road together.
I'm in. Okay, we're going to take that one offline. You and I are going to talk about that. So this, I think, is really, really important. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that we had wanted to talk about. We've talked about this idea of the time money trap, because that's, leveraging away from that, but then also how to start finding new sources of revenue. So do you have any other stories that you can tell us about that, like inspiration for what it looks like? You don't have to mention names, it can be a client, right? But do you have any other inspiration stories that you can share of how someone kind of got out of that rhythm? Because it's hard to get out of.
Absolutely. So I can share one from my client, and then I can also, I'm going to share the famous person first, and then show how like a regular smuggler
Beautiful
person was able to do it as well. So I think a lot of you know of Miss Rachel Rogers, who I just think is a genius. Rachel started off as a trademark attorney, doing exactly what most service professionals do, which is exchanging time for money. Someone came to her, said they needed a trademark or a contract, etc., and it was X amount because it was going to take her X amount of time to do it. And then Rachel needed to do maternity leave, and because she was in the US, there wasn't any guaranteed maternity leave, and in any event, she was self-employed. And she was like, what can I do to sell without exchanging time? Because I want to take 3 months off with my first child as maternity leave. And she decided to create a course about setting up a virtual law office, because that's what she knew how to do. And so she created that. And she sold it, and that funded her 3 month maternity leave. And she was like, it was amazing to have money coming in, and I didn't have to provide services because it was pre-created. From there, she experimented with retainers and packages and programs. And then she came up with something called the Small Business Bodyguard, which is a collection of templates and videos and worksheets, etc., for small business owners to be able to deal with the legal side of running their business. And that allowed her to transition out of providing one-for-one legal services. She started coaching. She was doing one-to-one legal, so started off coaching one-to-one services. She's still making money. This is the other beautiful thing about intellectual property. It allows you freedom to pivot and to explore new things. Because while you are creating something else, the things that you've already created and are being sold without you having to render services. You're no longer exchanging time for money. Still requires some marketing, but the thing has already been created. It's now to sell. It's like the commoditization of a service, essentially. Anyway, so she started coaching. Then she went to group coaching. Then she went to a membership, and in the membership, she put all of the courses that she'd ever created. So again, she made money when she sold the courses to individuals, and she also now bumped up the value of her membership because she's got access to all of these coaches. Rachel then realized, look, I'm further back from my business than I used to be, but I'm still showing up to do some coaching. I'm still training people. And so she decided to create a coaching certification program where the framework that she was teaching, she taught to others. And she did it internally first within her business. And once she had perfected it, she sold it to the outside one. I think her coaching certification, I think it's like 25,000 US, and it sold out within like
amazing
the first days of her offering it. And again,
yeah,
she's going to make money from the certification. She'll make money from the ongoing payment to be certified, and the impact is now like significantly scaled up, because as opposed to just being her teaching this framework, you've got dozens, if not hundreds of people helping people in the same framework. So her vision is more likely to be accomplished because there are more people working in the same vein. So that's
okay, I want to pause there because we're getting comments. So loving this question. This is such amazing insight. It's pushing me to finally start bringing some ideas I've had for years to life.
That's amazing.
Okay, next story. Okay. Bring it on.
Okay. So one of my clients, and she doesn't mind me sharing this, so one of my clients, Nakan, is a peak performance and mindset coach. And Hannah came to me a few years ago, and she's like, I am at capacity. Like, I can't take any more private clients. I've got my group program, but I feel that there's some people who need that one-on-one attention, and I can't give it. Also, I'm making a lot of money, and I'd like some time to spend it. Like, she wasn't taking vacation. She wasn't really taking any time off. Hannah had a very specific way of coaching. And so I said, have you ever considered certification? Would you ever consider training other coaches in your method, so that when someone came to you for private coaching, which you're at complete capacity, you can now refer to people who've been trained in your manner. And you've got a lot of clients who are coaches, so you've got a really fertile soil for people who would purchase at least the first round of this. That sounds like a lot of work. I'll think about it. A year passed. Came back.
I love that. I thought about it and now I'm tired. But I want to pause because I actually had a conversation about this morning. Sometimes the investment is not about the monetary cost of the investment. Sometimes the decision to make an investment is because of all the other unpaid time that you're not accounting for and the ease at which things will start to move forward if you make this financial investment.
This is the thing. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
financial investment and it is a time investment. And I often, the conversation I have with people who are like, I'm too busy
Yeah.
to do it. I'm like, you're too busy not to do it. Because if you continue, you're never going to have time. You're never going to free yourself up enough to be able to scale your business. So Hannah decided she wanted to do this, and it maybe about 8, 9 months to put this into place. And again, sold out. Like it's added multiple six figures to her business and
Mm-hmm.
to her impact. Because now people that wouldn't have worked with her before because there isn't an opportunity to have that one-on-one are still benefiting from her framework from people who've been trained and are very much in the same way that she would provide coaching services. And now she can take time off. And now she can bring in coaches even internally to be able to provide some of the programming. And now she can step back and really work just in the same
Oh, I
way.
believe it.
It's been
The
right.
ability to actually finally be an owner and a visionary as well as, because when we start, most often we're an implementer, right? We have got a core skill, we're
Oh,
picking up either by intuition or by intention, different business acumen and leadership skills. And then we're caught in the doing cycle and we don't get a lot of time to work on our business, which is really the conversation we're having about, what is it that I do that we can then document so that we can then have it as a different source of income. I have to tell you, my friend, just quickly, another comment. Andrea, after this, it looks like you might have another speaking engagement because this knowledge would be so great for my group of creators. So we'll let you two connect offline afterwards. So yeah, I love it. Love it.
amazing, amazing. I love the the point that you just made about documentation. And so I, I, I know that this can be overwhelming. The idea of creating, a certification or a license or a course or anything where you are moving what you know in your services into more of a product. The easiest way to start and release pressure is just to start documenting. Whenever you are doing something, literally just screen record, right? There are lots of free apps that allow you to do it. Record everything that you do. How do you speak with your clients? How do you answer questions? How do you bring someone into your organization? How do you, follow up with them after they've left? If you start documenting all that, you can do it in a really low pressure way by just doing screen recording. You have an intern who will come and follow you around and take notes, but start documenting what you do. Often, especially as
Yes.
solopreneurs, everything's in here. And if everything stays here, we can never get it out to anyone else, right? So if all you do is have the documentation so you can get people to help you, it's already done a good job. It's already helped you a lot. But really, the real juice in it is documenting and then seeing, okay, well, there is a trend in what people ask me. I tend to provide these types of services or this type of information. How could I package that in a way that doesn't require me to exchange time for money, but people out there will get the same
Oh,
time
I love
investment
that.
as a
I
product?
often talk when we talk about business plans, and in this case, processes, getting it out of the intuition and sticky notes and into a Google Doc, right? Shout out to Simple Tech Stack. Like, does not have to be complicated. It just has to be
Yeah,
written down. And
yeah,
I know sticky notes are written down. Don't
yeah.
get me wrong.
When
I
I
hear what I'm saying, but it's not the same thing. it's not.
no,
It's
I
not the same
understand what
thing.
you mean. Often, when I do my program, the question people are often, oh, what tech do I need? Don't start with the tech. For a lot of us, tech, for me, certainly, tech is very overwhelming. I'm like, I use it a lot because it's useful, but don't start with the tech. If you start with the tech, one, you're kind of trying to match what you're doing into whatever tech you pick. Start with a low tech. Like whenever I'm kind of brainstorming a new process or a new product, I have these big sticky notes that I stick all over the wall
Oh, you
and
know
I just
what? You and
write.
I are friends for so many reasons. I do too. Okay, so we are at time. This has flown by. Are there any final words that you want to share?
Oh gosh. I would say I really encourage people to take even if it's, I understand what it's like, being in the doing, but to take a little time to have a bit of a bird's eye view. Because the beautiful thing about intellectual property is going well through intellectual property is open to anyone. It's not like a stock. It's not like real estate where you need to have money already to do it. You can create something from literal thin air just by the brilliance of your brain. And I love that because it means that there's a pathway to a big business, strong business, and strong revenue and wealth for people who are traditionally excluded. So you don't have to come from a rich family. You don't have to have a generous uncle. By virtue of your brilliance and your creativity, you can create an asset that benefits you and your children. So it's something that's
Oh
super
my gosh,
important to
I'm
tell.
like a little bit moved. Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.
Oh,
Thank you.
you're
Thank
so
you for having
welcome.
me.
You're
This was
so
fun.
welcome. And for those listening, again, you've been listening to Best for Women Live, the podcast with Andrea Henry. She is a partner at Henry Brooks LLP and an IP strategist. My name's Brooke Gordon. I'm so glad you were joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.